Hey everyone, Adam here, So Was Your Podcast. I got another review for you today. Once again, before we get into it, big thank you to the people at Amazon for sending us these screeners. Another Amazon original series. They got a lot coming out this summer. I have a huge list of stuff to get through, and I was really excited when this one hit the inbox because I didn't know it was going to be a show until I got the email. This one is for the series A League of Their Own. If the name sounds familiar, it's because it's the same name as a 1992 movie directed by Penny Marshall, which explains why it's so great. But I used to really like this movie. My sister and I used to watch it all the time. So I was excited to see it becoming a series, and expanding it out, I thought, gave them more time to explore things. There is going to be a bit of comparison versus series versus movie, but I'd never read the original story. I believe it was a short story that this is based on. While the broad strokes of it are based in history, I mean, there's some real people, more so in the movie, like they talk about the Hershey Company and stuff. They changed it to Baker for the series for whatever reason, probably just clearance issues. I don't believe any of the specific individual characters are real people. I think it was just the concept, someone took it and ran with it. And for those unfamiliar, if you haven't seen the movie, the concept is in the 1940s when all the men were joining the army or being drafted into the army to go fight World War II, the women home who weren't really allowed in the armed forces to the same degree that they are now by a long shot, had to pick up things like factory work, farm work, feeding people, doing drives, recycling drives, food drives for the troops, really kept America running, and one of those things was keeping the American pastime of baseball running. So they made a women's, I believe they called it a girls' professional baseball league, and that's what the story of A League of Their Own is about. And I hesitated there for a reason which we will get to. A League of Their Own, the series, primarily follows Carson Shaw, who's from a small town, I want to say Idaho, could be Indiana. I tend to get those two confused. But small town girl who goes in to try out for this thing, and there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of different players, this and that, and you gotta get to know a lot of the different women in this world, and they're all excited to get their opportunity to play baseball. The new wrinkle that I was really into for this series was Max Chapman, played by Shantae Adams. I think I forgot to mention it. Carson Shaw was played by Abby Jacobson. So as the story is primarily following Carson Shaw being a woman in which was very much more a man's world in 1943, adding the character of Max Chapman as an African American who wants to play baseball in a man's world, not only that, but a white man's world, was an interesting wrinkle, and I thought was a very interesting thing to explore for the time period. I thought there was a couple predictable things where by like the second episode, she was going to be playing for the team, and it goes deeper than, there's more to it than that. She's got a kind of comedic sidekick best friend who's not always the comedic sidekick, but kind of a sounding board. It was just a really interesting new direction to take, and kind of a brainless thing where, yeah, maybe tackling the issue of race in America didn't fit the tone of the 1992 Penny Marshall movie, which was largely a comedy, where this version has kind of those comedic elements, but it gets more into the drama. There's going to be very mild spoilers going ahead. I'm not giving away story specifics so much as just kind of the broad direction the story takes. Even if you want to watch this series, I would say to hang in there because I don't think I'm going to give anything away. And watching the series, that might come across as a little harsh when we get to what the subject matter is, but it was jarring to me. So this is an 8-episode season. It comes out this Friday, August. I watched 6.5 out of the 8 because at first I was super on board, and then I wanted to see where it was going with the shift it made. So in the beginning, it is very much women playing baseball, women finding their place in a man's world, African-American women trying to find their place in a man's world. There's a character, Esty Gonzalez, played by Priscilla Delgado, who's from Cuba, which I thought was going to be an even more, well, not even more, but equally as interesting thing to explore because, as we know, relations with Cuba didn't stay good for very long. Unfortunately, that aspect was dropped a little bit more, and it was more just kind of like a fish out of water story where she didn't speak English, and she could really only talk to one person on the team who wasn't really all that nice to her. As the story's going on, Carson is developing a relationship with Greta Gill, played by Darcy Carden. You might recognize her from The Good Place, which was phenomenal, and of course other projects, but that's just my go-to with her. And the two of them become more than friends. So now the series is exploring the LGBTQ. If I'm getting any of this terminology wrong, it is not intentional. It's exploring the character's gay relationship, and Carson is conflicted because, one, it's really not societally okay in 1943. She doesn't want to get kicked off the team, which they made clear if you're not what the world wants to see, or the country at least wants to see as what they consider a lady, you're gone. It's not about baseball. It's kind of about the presentation. And she's married. Her husband is currently fighting in the army, and in her way, she does love her husband. So there's all this stuff going on between Carson and Greta, and it starts to go into the wider world, and it's in there a little bit in the first 4 episodes. But in episode 4, I believe, like right when you get to the half point of the series just takes this shift. It brings it into a series about women and women's rights and how women should have equal rights, especially looking back with our more modern lens. It becomes more about gay rights, which, great. It was interesting to explore both of those stories, and I don't see why you couldn't explore both of those stories. And not only that, but then you had a third thing worth exploring with African American rights, because this was before the huge, massive civil rights movement of the 1960s, obviously. That's still 20 years away, which, when you look at history, 20 years is both a blink and a lifetime. So it's this interesting thing where they had 3 angles of attack, all for underrepresented voices, because a lot of stuff now is about representation, and I'm all for it. But to just focus on this one angle so directly and so abruptly kind of took me out of the show. Not to say they shouldn't explore it, but it became all-encompassing. It enveloped the show. The whole baseball angle was really shoved to the side. It wasn't about them trying to fit in more practices, even though their coach didn't really care, and that's something else we actually have to get to. I'll try to remember to circle back to it, because the whole coach aspect, I had a big problem with changes from movies to series. So it's no longer about that. They do introduce the fact that the league might be breaking up the team, even though these people are bonded now, because they don't really have a chance to get into the finals, and they got to be selling tickets. So now the team is trying to prove how good they are, but they kind of do that just through exposition only, and then a couple montages of them stealing a base or, catching a ball, stopping a home run. Something like very little baseball is going on. And if you ask me, baseball is one of the most boring games that people watch, and I cannot fathom watching an entire baseball game. But sports are a great metaphor for underdog stories. Rocky made boxing what it was at its height just because of the underdog story aspect of it. $1 Million Baby was the same thing. The fight was the literal representation of the character. I feel like I don't have to explain a sports metaphor, but maybe I do, because the writers of the series of A League of Their Own kind of lost the plot on it, and it just became about gay rights in the 1940s, or lack of rights in the 1940s. And as I keep saying, I don't want to enrage anybody, but as I keep saying, I was all for exploring that angle. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was something that, oh yeah, of course there was an issue of that going on in women's sports in the 1940s. Let's look into it. Oh, Max Chapman isn't allowed to play, not just because she's a woman, because now there's a women's league, but also because she's a black woman, and she had to earn her place in a factory job when there's work shortages like crazy. Her uphill battle for every last thing in her life is insane, but she was the most captivating character for a good chunk of the series, and she was kind of sidelined in a lot of ways. The gay rights aspect of the story goes into her story as well, and it becomes a different thing, so she's still included, but I think there was a larger thing to say. They could have done something for this segment of the African American community in the early 1940s, which I think is very, very interesting, because rights were starting to happen. Racism was starting to come down, but it was still very much there and still very in your face in society. It was not this subtle thing. And the historical aspects of women's rights, gay rights, and African American rights could have been really, really fully explored. Add in the Cuban thing, because racism wasn't just against one race in the 1940s. It was very much a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant world. There was so much they could have done, keeping the baseball part of it, keeping baseball the metaphor, keeping the team the metaphor, and just having fun, because this is still trying to be a comedy at a lot of times, with the ridiculousness of it all, especially looking back on it from a modern lens. So I'm not saying I didn't like the series, the shift it took, because I'm not into those social political messages. I'm not into it because it's not what the first 4 episodes told us we were getting, and even though they were going all in on one, putting the other ones to the sideline made it something of a missed opportunity, and I was really bummed out. I am saying all this without having finished the season. I still have an episode and a half to go, but I don't know if I'm going back to it because this is not the show I signed up for. There are shows that do these different things in their own way. I thought it was cool to do it all together and in the look back at the 1940s. I'm a huge fan of learning about history. I do believe if you don't know history, you're going to repeat your past mistakes. All that good stuff. I was all on board until it just kind of... I don't know if the writing got lazy, but it just got too hung up on one aspect, and there's no reason why it couldn't do multiple aspects. A little side tangent thing, and it's a much lesser issue given all the higher stakes they have, but the coach of the team, who in the movie was played excellently by Tom Hanks, who was kind of a washed-up baseball player and a drunk, and he didn't really want to have anything to do with it, is now played by Nick Offerman, which I thought was going to be really awesome, who was known as Dove Porter, who was also kind of a player past his prime. He was coaching this thing. He acted like he was all on board, and then Shaw overhears a conversation where he's like, I'm just trying to be relevant again. And he's gone really in the blink of an eye. There was almost no reason in having him there, especially someone like Nick Offerman, who has this kind of built-in charisma and charm, even if he was going to be the sleazy guy who didn't care. I thought there was a lot of missed opportunity there. And I know the series isn't the movie, but they're using the name recognition for a reason, because I would bet pretty much anything that more people have seen the 1992 movie than have read the original story. And, oh, they're going back to the source material. We don't need a League of Their Own cinematic universe here, but having the main player and coach dynamic where they kind of hated each other, then we need each other, then kind of became friends. That was a missed opportunity. Shaw doesn't have a sister in it. The Geena Davis character, who kind of took up the lead in the movie, had a sister who wasn't as good and wouldn't have made the team if Geena Davis didn't say, no, my sister's coming too. And then there's the whole thing with the transfer where they play each other. Missed opportunity there. It didn't even have to be a sister. It could have been best friends. There's all these awesome player pieces left on the table that the series didn't conquer. And maybe they were holding on to it in hopes of a season 2 or 3. But if you ask me, and I'm definitely no expert, I don't write for TV as much as that would be awesome, I don't feel like you're supposed to leave your big guns at home hoping for the next battle. I think you're supposed to go all in and make your first season as good as it can be, and then explore things from there. Maybe what they should have done was explored a lot of little things, and if they got an extra season, went to more narrow focus on individual aspects of the show. But whether I'm right or wrong, my opinion is that they took a hard turn. It's not what was advertised. It's not what the first 4 hours of this project were. And while I'm not against giving voices to underrepresented communities or people or whatever term you want to use, there was an opportunity to do it for so many more groups and so many more people that it's kind of a shame that it just... I don't want to say devolved. I don't mean to sound insulting that it's exploring gay rights in the 1940s, because, as I've said many times, that is an interesting angle. They just they dropped the ball in a lot of other ways. So, kind of a not so flattering review, and I apologize because the show is well made. It's well acted. I liked everyone in the cast. I loved the first 4 episodes. I was talking to my sister about it, like, hey, remember that movie we used to watch all the time together? It's coming out as a series. You got to check it out. Oh, then the text, a few hours later is, hey, here's a heads up on that series. It might not be what you think it is. And I've said in a lot of other reviews that just because something isn't what you think it is doesn't necessarily make it bad. But when the series isn't what it's advertising and what it started as, and it's not enhancing itself by cutting other things out of the mix, other people out of the mix, I have a hard time getting behind it. If you're still curious, A League of Their Own comes out Friday, August 12th on Amazon Prime. It is an Amazon original. Again, thank you to the people at Amazon for sending us this way and giving me the opportunity to check it out. I hope it finds its audience. If this speaks more to you, that's great. I'm glad it exists for you. It's just not what I was looking for, and I think it could have and should have done more. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. As I said, we have a lot more new Amazon series to get to. We have a ton of movie reviews coming out. Joey's been killing it on TikTok with the 1-minute reviews, so if you don't have time to listen to me ramble for 10, 15, 20 minutes, if you don't have time for an interview, which we've been getting some great people on, so try to make the time. Short reviews for movies. We got tons of screeners, comic reviews, more interviews coming. We got more indie creators coming on. A lot of stuff. Like, subscribe, bell, all that. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not wanting to miss out, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice of life comedy comic following kids through the high school experience, all the ridiculousness that goes along with it. It's them trying to kind of figure out who they are. It's slice of life and coming of age. We got 9 issues available now, 10 and 11 coming any day now, 12 and 13 well underway, 14 underway, a lot of content. You're not going to want to miss out. You can find all of that at socialstudiescomic.com or on Comixology, including Comixology Unlimited. Thanks.